Okay. So if you need a copy of this, just let me know and I will post it onto YouTube after and I can send you the link. So welcome to our online chat cafe, the May edition. My special guest is Tony Estevez, who's a wonderful human being, as you're about to find out, and a good friend and associate as well. It's brought to you by Coffee News. I have a sponsor for these now. They help promote it, and we're doing a little joint venture work. So Coffee News Toronto, if you need to advertise and reach the downtown Toronto market, this is definitely worth looking into. So our online chat cafe, that is our little branding logo there. It's kind of cool, our little branding logo. Our guest today is Tony Estevez. He's an experienced entrepreneur. He's a performer, an athlete, a speaker, an entertainer. He's got a varied and unique international experiences that provide for the foundation for his company, Eye on the Ball. Tony is an inspirational facilitator who takes audiences through energetic, entertaining, and interactive learning experiences. I know because I've experienced them quite a few times at Mo Mondays. I did his creativity camp a few winters ago. I've seen him juggle. I've seen you in action, Tony. He's known for delivering skills and techniques and engaging people in a very memorable way. As a keynote speaker and workshop facilitator, Tony shares inspiring stories about how unexpected connections can transform one's career. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, too. There he is. Nice little picture. That's him juggling. That might have even been at the event you came to, the radio show event. I think that's where that was from.
That one's from Calgary.
Okay. You know better than I do. So we're going to talk about, living with passion, living your dreams, living life on your terms. And the reason I felt that this topic was kind of timely is because I don't know about you, but this year has been just a year of just intense change. And it's almost like we're being nudged by the universe to sort of really step into, our truest, fullest potential. It's like if we're not going willingly, it's going to hurt. So you might as well just be open to the change and just accept, allow, and trust. Is anybody feeling that? Tony, have you been feeling that?
To some extent, I think. Yeah, certainly. You could say it's this year, or you could say it's where you are as an individual. But I would say that for me as an individual, certainly the last year has been a whirlwind of change.
Yeah.
And I definitely I consider myself to be fairly open to whatever's coming. But I think that I've been encouraged by some forces to really be open to let things flow, and then they start flowing.
Well, it started for you a few years ago, and we're going to get to that. And living life on your terms. When did that notion become, real for you? I mean, a few years ago, you were you're now based in Calgary. For everybody on the call, you were living in Toronto, and making a life here, but you decided to move. What transpired?
I needed some change. I've done a decent amount of traveling and found that I've become the best version of myself when I've been out there, when I've been in unique situations where perhaps I didn't speak the language or understand the culture. And I was going through a tough time in 2013, and my twin sister, who's one of my best friends, suggested, she said, "Twin, come on out to Calgary. You can crash on my couch and just climb some mountains," because she knows that I love mountains, and see what happens. And what do you know? It turned out to be a permanent move because it's been a really great fit.
Right, and it was a courageous move because you were really based quite strongly here. You had all your connections, your work was here, but what prompted that move? Is it just because that's a big move to go from Toronto to Calgary, and other than knowing your sister, you had no other contacts out there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Truthfully, actually, before we get too far into the call, first of all, David, thank you so much, and thank you to Melissa, Jason, Kelly, Karen, Colleen, Irene, Steve, Stu, and anyone else who's on the call right now for being here. It's my pleasure to be here, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to have this chat with you. So thanks, David, for having me, and thanks to those of you who are in on the call. I look forward to speaking with you a little bit later in the call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to answer your question, I just got tired of doing a whole bunch of free work as an entrepreneur, and I couldn't figure out how to monetize my offerings, which I think is probably something that almost every entrepreneur goes through at some stage. And it was really frustrating for me that people were telling me that I was a talented facilitator, a talented performer, but very few people were telling me that with a check. And so I got myself into a financial pickle, with becoming an entrepreneur and stopping full-time work, and it just became a bit overwhelming. So a change of scenery, rather than being such a courageous move, I think it was almost a form of escapism, to be honest. Was just to come out here and clear my head and to hang out with my sister and to smash off some mountains. So that's more how it was from my perspective. Was I needed a change desperately.
This change is also part of your makeup, and you live life on your terms. When did this, this sort of strong, I'm going to live life on my terms, I'm going to live my best passionate life? Because when I see your life, and that you post at least on Facebook, you're skiing, you're doing improv, you're speaking, you're traveling the world, you're putting pitches together for this, camping thing across Canada. When did this sort of, passion and notion and I'm going to live life on my terms, when did that sort of become real for you, Tony?
I think that became real for me right after I finished university. A long time ago. A buddy of mine called me from British Columbia. I went to the University of Windsor in Ontario, and I got a degree in communication studies. And I didn't really have a plan. It's just I got a phone call from an old high school buddy who had recently moved out to Victoria, BC, and he said, "Hey, Tony, there's lots of work out here. Why don't you leave Ontario behind? Come hang out here and check out the mountains." Right? I was 22, maybe 23, never been on an airplane before, and just dropped everything, sold all my worldly possessions, typical bachelor stuff, a car, a nice stereo, a bed, whatever, a furnished room in a shared house, and jumped on a plane and flew out to BC. And that really started I think that really opened my eyes to the world of possibilities by meeting a whole bunch of foreigners when I ended up living in Whistler, and just seeing that at that age the world was my oyster, and I guess I never really looked back.
I sense that you have this, you're okay with losing the attachments and letting go and then trusting. That doesn't come easily for a lot of us. We want, the sure job, the sure thing, the sure bet. What did you learn from this sort of, because it seems like you've done it again recently with your move from Toronto to Calgary again, where you're just sort of letting go, taking on embracing the new and the unknown and the world of possibility and trusting.
Awesome question. For me, I'd say it's well suited to my personality. I would definitely describe myself as a risk taker, and I've harvested a great deal of satisfaction by putting myself out there. But the neat thing, again, my perspective is very different than perhaps the general population, because I don't see it as such a risk to pick up and move to a new country or a new city. I see it as just a fantastic, stimulating opportunity. And it's really up to the individual to decide how much they're letting go of. So when you describe letting go to go do a new career or a new live in a new place, you're really only letting go of as much as you choose to no longer maintain contact with. And one thing I'm very proud of throughout my travels, even I'd say before I started traveling when I was a teenager, is that I learned at a young age the importance of keeping in contact with the people who are important to me. And so when I've taken off from any place, I've seen people tearful, I've seen girlfriends upset, I've seen all kinds of people being bummed out that I was leaving or that they were leaving or whatever. And I would usually be fairly emotionless because I would know that this wasn't goodbye. This is just, I'll see you later. Even if that see you later was going to be a year or 2 years down the road. I know, because of my commitment to maintain important relationships in my life, that I would see that person later. So it hasn't really felt so much like goodbye, you know?
Mm-hmm. So this notion of living life on your terms, who were your mentors? Like, who instilled that in you?
There's been quite a few. I suppose the first one that pops to mind is a very good friend of mine, an English fellow named John Stromberg, who I did quite a bit of traveling with in 1999. That was at the beginning of my traveling career. And this guy was, at that time, you could kind of describe him as a bit of a hobo or a bit of a hippie. And I use those terms affectionately. And he's the fellow who taught me how to juggle. And we just had a bunch of fun bumbling around Europe with a van that cost about $250 that really couldn't run, and just got into all kinds of shenanigans, just having fun as early 20-year-olds should in foreign countries. And this fellow just really taught me that it didn't really matter what people thought about you based on your appearance or it's kind of hard for me to articulate, but he just taught me to be pretty genuine. Just taught me to be genuine and be honest and be real. And that was something I hadn't really experienced up until that stage of my life, I don't believe, from my North American friends, was just someone who was so unabashedly authentic and genuine. So my good friend John would be my first main mentor, I'd say.
All right, and authenticity is huge right now. You know, I think we're seeking authenticity. We're seeking real. We're tired of the BS. You know, like whether it's in mainstream media or in the advertising world, or we're being sold a bill of goods to. It's like we're craving real. Like tell us the real deal. And authenticity is huge. How has that played out in your life, Tony? Being real and authentic, because you really are. You're one of my friends that I find is really true, real, and authentic. You lay it on the line,
Thank you, David. That's very kind of you to say, and I would say the same thing back to you with the chats that you've been very generous to have with me at coffee shops in Toronto, and some of the mentorship that you've offered to me as well. You are also an incredibly authentic, real person, who I'm super grateful to know.
Thanks.
But and from my end of things, I'd say that I don't think I've always been as authentic as I am now, and I wouldn't claim to be the most real, authentic person on the planet, but I would claim to be the most real, authentic person who I can be at this stage of my life. And by that I mean another one of my mentors, Dr. Lance Secretan, taught me in 2012 that authenticity it should be like a guiding principle for people, and that even things as small as little white lies that people tell for whatever reasons shouldn't exist. And he challenged me to just really cut the BS in my life, the BS story that I was telling other people to some degree, and the garbage that I was telling myself. And so I think I learned a great deal from him. That was right around 2012, just getting into building my business. That was a huge lesson for me from Lance Secretan.
And for those on the webinar today, if you're not familiar with Dr. Lance Secretan, he runs the Secretan Institute. He's Canadian. He's an author, a very successful businessman. I think he was the fellow that started the company Manpower in Canada. And he now does leadership work with executives. He wrote one of the books there's a couple books I've read, but the one that stood out the most was Reclaiming Higher Ground, and it was just about instilling sort of team and leadership in the corporate sector, because there's a lot of that, you know, facade going on in companies, you know, and we're not authentic. We're not our true selves. We're maybe a little bit in fear. And he teaches a lot on leadership. He's quite a prolific author. One of the cool things, I don't know if you took part in this, Tony, but he'll take executives to Colorado and have them learn how to ski down the highest peak. And if they can master that, they can master anything.
Yeah, he's an expert skier as well, and yeah, he takes people at sort of an intermediate level and makes them break through boundaries and become expert skiers in a weekend at his beautiful house on the mountain, which is incredible. And I'd just like to add that one further thing that's sensational about Dr. Secretan is that you say he talks on leadership, he's an author and all these incredible accolades, which is true, but what was most amazing for me and why I went and spent 3 days with him was that he teaches about inspiration, and rather than talking about working with an organization to come up with like a mission, vision, and values statement, he gets people to come up with a dream statement, and that was a really powerful piece of learning as well from me, from learning from him.
So, what was your dream, and is it now becoming, you know, into fruition? What was your dream that you created with Dr. Lance?
Yeah, I'd have to check my notes to see exactly what I had written down a couple of years ago, because of course it's evolved. But it would definitely have been along the lines of, I'm here to inspire people to reach for and achieve their full potential. And it seems that a couple of years down the road, that's what I'm doing.
Are you attached to the outcome?
Could you clarify that question?
Well, you know, like I find, you know, we create a dream or a vision around our business or our life work or what we're doing, and there's there's an attachment to it. Oh, it's got to look a certain way. I sense with you that it doesn't have to look a certain way. That you're more open to sort of just embracing whatever is to show up.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant evolution. In that regard, I would say no. I'm not attached to the outcome, because the outcome is always changing. You know, if we have a master goal in life, let's say we want to achieve this accolade in our career, or we want to make a certain amount of money, or we want financial security, whatever it is. Once we obtain that, rarely do we sit down and say, cool, all right, well, my life's all organized. I think I'll just go play golf. You know, people desperately need to do more, no matter where they are on their journey. And that is, I think, both a wonderful thing as well as a bit of a human paradox, because some people don't know how to be satisfied and present with what they have now, no matter how good or poor it is in their eyes. But then there are people who have so little, as I've experienced in some countries I've traveled to, who are the happiest, the most smiling, joyful, loving people you've ever seen in your life. And it can be easy as a Westerner to think, well, geez, what's wrong with me if I can't smile like that every day, and I've got all my basics covered, and I never am going to have to worry about my next meal. Holy smokes, these guys have it right, you know. So, sorry, I don't know if I went off on a tangent there.
No. You learn along the way. You know, you learn
along the way. The goal is always evolving if we're progressing as individuals, I think.
But you know, with our goals, they're going to be naysayers. I know I've had some lofty goals and early in my life, and my family were naysayers. You know, like one was to get into radio, and they said, well, radio, like, why do you think you'll be good at radio?
Mm-hmm.
And I was only in my 20s then, right? And it's just the reason I said why is because I had a passion for it. I loved it, right?
And you knew that you would do it, and you did it, and you've done it well.
Yeah,
right?
Thank you.
I would say that's actually an excellent point. Yes, there are definitely naysayers, and they can often be the people who are closest to you, like your partner, your spouse, your family members.
Or your CAPS members in your case.
Yeah, CAPS members can be.
You want to know that story?
I'll get to that in a second. They've actually, my CAPS community here has been unbelievably supportive, but I know I sent you a note about one particular thing that I'd like to touch on, and I will. And but to address what you just mentioned about, when you have naysayers and you've got lofty goals, the best advice I could give to anybody when they've got lofty goals is, if you feel it as an individual that this is something that you want to do, no matter how lofty that goal is, you can definitely do it. The trick is that you probably, at your early stage of whatever the endeavor is, can't possibly imagine the amount of time, work, and commitment required to get to that goal. And I'll use myself as an example. So as I'd mentioned to you in a brief call, recently I'm now getting booked to do keynote talks, and my business is taken off. I'm very, very proud to report. And to do the stuff on the subject matter with which I'm most excited about, which is about inspiration, which is about these unexpected serendipitous connections, is a very, very lofty goal that I've had for years, like more than 5 years, more than before I even set up my first website. And I had naysayers. I had people telling me, you can't do that. You've got to have climbed Mount Everest or be an Olympic athlete or overcome some massive physical disability to become an inspirational speaker. And I just kept on thinking, no, I'm going to do this. And I had family members who, out of love, not out of criticism, said, hey, how much longer are you going to try to make this speaking thing go, because we really want you to be secure. We really want you to have everything you need for retirement and for raising a family and all that stuff. And so often the naysayers, they're not trying to put you down. They're commenting based on their love for you. And I see that as a really beautiful thing, but I couldn't see that along the way. And so to go full circle, I'd say for anyone else who's on the call who's got some big dreams, I can guarantee you, and I use myself as an example, you can get there, but it's a lot more work than you think it is to get there.
Yeah, it's the old 2-2-1 rule that applies. It takes twice as long, it costs twice as much, and you earn half as what you thought you'd earn, right?
Right, but when it comes,
it's fun.
It is some of the most sensational moments you could possibly dream of experiencing in your life.
Well, I want to talk to you too about the move from Calgary or from Toronto to Calgary, because this is a big thing. Like sometimes I think if we're going to make change in our lives, sometimes we've got to blow it up. We got to blow the existing thing up, and we have to take sort of, drastic action. And you took drastic action. You moved from Toronto out to Calgary. That's pretty drastic, with no job, nothing kind of to go to other than your sister's place and everything. And I'm reminded by, and we're going to take questions from everybody in a second, so get ready. But I'm always reminded by that Bruce Springsteen song, I want to change my clothes, my hair, my face. Remember that one? I ain't nothing but tired, right? And I think sometimes you get to that point in your life, you just go, I gotta shift it up. So, in order to break free, you had to make that big move 3 years ago. And we alluded to what precipitated it, was the fact that things weren't kind of working here for you. Your sister, said, yeah, come out, try it out. But what was the feeling and the emotion behind that move? And how did you deal with any, thoughts and feelings and fears about it? Two-pronged question.
So the feeling around the mood, like the feeling around coming out, was twofold. It was, as I'd mentioned earlier, a sense of escapism. It was, this ain't working. I got to do something else. Get me out of here. Even for a short period of time, even if it was just going to be out here for a month or two.
Yeah, because originally you were only going to be there for 3 months, right?
That's right. 3 months was the initial intention. So there was just anxiety, and I think even a little desperation around being really frustrated with where I was as an entrepreneur. And secondly, there was this familiar excitement that I have felt before any of my travels that I think I have often suppressed for whatever reasons. I haven't allowed myself to fully express this excitement. In fact, as I talk it out right now, I think that's mainly because many of the people who I used to associate with when I started my traveling couldn't relate because they hadn't done any traveling. So when I would share my joyful, ridiculous adventures, they would sometimes feel that I was being, well, in fact, I was being self-centered, but it was out of celebration. I wasn't trying to say, hey, look at me. I was just trying to celebrate my experience. But they couldn't relate. So, so there was also this familiar feeling of excitement that I knew some incredible things might just lie right ahead for me. And indeed they did.
Hmm. Was this the most alive you've ever felt when you got there and started to embrace your new life? Was that the most alive you've ever felt, Tony?
No. The most alive I've ever felt is today.
Okay.
That time was the time of transition and working through some really big challenges in my life. Some really big challenges in my mind, in my psychology. That was not much of a celebratory time as it happened. It was exciting, and I was thrilled that I got to climb mountains and earn more money in my business that summer than I had the entire previous year. Bonus. But the most alive I've ever felt in my life, I would say, has just been in the last few weeks with what's going on right now.
Hmm. Is that a conscious choice, like that you're living more in the moment these days, or what would you attribute that to? Because you've had some pretty cool adventures out west, and yet here you are, your career is taking off in a direction that you really wanted to go to. Is that why, or are you just being more in the moment about life?
I think that recently, the biggest change is recently I've been able to just do less and become less busy and not go to so many coffee meetings and not go to so many networking events and not feel guilty about not always working on my business when I'm not working on my part-time job to pay the rent. And by doing less, I know there's been volumes written on this, but by doing less, I have suddenly found that it's like someone opened the door to opportunity for me, and almost every day I'm getting a call or an email about an inquiry for a performance, a talk, some coaching, a workshop. It's been like a dream, and in fact, it's so much less like a dream than it is like exactly what I've written down would be my ideal day 2-3 years ago in an exercise. Is that I'd like to wake up, have my coffee, do some reading of whatever kind of reading I want to do, feel really relaxed, and then around 10 o'clock in the morning, finally take a look at my email and just see email after email of requests for my services doing the inspiring work that I love to do. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I had written that down. I've written that down and variations of that down several times, and kind of thought 80% of this, and 80% of me thought this could happen one day, but 20% really thought, yeah, right, dream on. And a year would pass, and I'd read my journal entries from a year ago, and I'd think, well, yeah, maybe one day, kind of thing. But now that day has arrived, and I can see in hindsight that had I not really thought clearly about what it is that I wanted to do, like the lifestyle I wanted to live, the income I wanted to have, the people I wanted to be surrounded by, had I not articulated that and written it down, I think there's a very good chance I still wouldn't be there.
Yeah, there's a power when you do that, isn't there? When you write it down and you really kind of stop and think.
Absolutely.
But then you've got to be open to receiving and open to whatever shows up, right?
Yeah, which will almost certainly not be the map, or it will almost certainly not be the road that you can imagine. Keep your goals and your dreams in mind. Keep them at front of mind every day. Absolutely. But don't think that you have the right to dictate how you're going to get there, because you do not.
All right. And I have a question for after, but I want to take questions from our participants. And Melissa Haddad, and I also want to welcome Larissa, just joined us, and Gerardo, welcome to the call. Tony, how long were you in business before you were able to do less and still continue to be successful? That's what Melissa asks.
How long was I in business until I was able to do less and still be successful?
Yeah.
Can you ask, or can I ask, Melissa, do you mean do less, like less actual work, or do less things, like as I
Yeah,
mentioned?
do less things.
Do less things. Sorry, it's Melissa. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, just to your last point where you said you were able to do less, which kind of opened more doors. You didn't have to go to all these networking events. You didn't have to go to all of this, and you didn't feel guilty, but you still had all these calls coming in to do this, to do that.
Right. So I am, let's see, I started my business really in 2012. So I'm just over 3 years in business here. I am under 2 years in profitable business. So, and I would say that the first 2 years of my journey as an entrepreneur was all about going to all of the events and meeting all kinds of people and figuring out what the heck it was that I had to offer. And the last year has been, well, I guess I've been out here now for 2 years. Wait a minute, what year are we in now? 2012, 13, 14, 15, yeah. I'd say the last year, year and a half, I've been able to turn that down, like tune that down a little bit, and instead nourish the relationships that I've had, continue to maintain contact both personally and professionally with people who I care about, and so the short answer is I think 2 to 3 years of really being very active has now allowed me to step back a little bit.
Does that answer your question, Melissa?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You know,
No problem.
this year too, Tony, I've gone through a little bit of a health issue with a toe infection, and it's under control now. But it prompted me to really do less, like because I had to get the it was a wound due to black toe from walking too much. And I had to, because I made it a point last summer to walk every day.
I remember.
Yeah. And so the toe got wounded and infections. I had to get the wound treated every night from like end of December through till end of March. So there were my nights. They were gone because I had to go to this clinic to get the wound treated, right? Yet this year has been one of the more profitable, abundant years I've had.
Wonderful.
And I like actually doing less and having more focus on really what matters.
Yeah, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, and I think that it only works after. It's so hard to say, okay, well now I could just stop doing all the work. Well, no, not quite. You're never going to stop doing all the work. I still do an awful lot of work. In particular, I publish all kinds of videos. I'm quite a busy video blogger now. I'm publishing more and more stuff on social media because I know that I have to, not necessarily because I'm that self-centered, but because I know it makes an impression, like advertising. And people often associate visibility with credibility. And so you need to have your face out there. I just set up my Instagram account 2 months ago because of the Woods Canada thing. And I know that they wanted people who were social media savvy, and I wasn't using Instagram, so I got on it. And what do you know? Actually, I really actually kind of like that platform. But anyways, I'd say people could experiment with it. Maybe don't stop going to all the things that you do or all the association meetings or whatever it is, but learn to say no to stuff that you're not really sure why you're going to it. So if you're going to an event of any kind and you're not going with a specific intention to either meet one of the speakers or presenters or somebody else there or promote something about yourself or your business that you're really excited about, then that might be a waste of time. And so that maybe could be an event that you could leave out or skip for 1 month or whatever. And then you free up a few extra hours in the week, and then there's all kinds of stuff that you could do in that time. And I'll be realistic and say that doesn't necessarily mean, improve your website or do some email marketing or whatever. No, that might mean sit down and watch a movie or go for a hike or have a beer. It might mean just some free time in your head. And that's what I think, like it all happens in your mind before it happens in the real world. And I think that's what really opens the doors, is giving yourself that space.
Melissa, also, can I ask your other question, Melissa? Which is about the naysayers.
Yes,
So, and if anyone else has a question, I noticed, Jason, you had your hand up. If you have a question, we'll get to it in a sec.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Melissa wrote, "I've not encountered the naysayers." Sorry, Melissa wrote, I just lost it here. I have not encountered the naysayers. Her family and husband have been incredibly supportive, but she says, I feel like I have to prove myself, but I don't know if I'm proving it to them or to myself. Have you or anyone else felt this? Did you feel
Great
that?
question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
I would say the stronger motivation, at least in my case, for to become successful in business. And by the way, I will let everyone on the call know, David, you've been really kind to give me a beautiful introduction there, and the stuff you put out on social media, you highly regard me as an accomplished professional, and thank you. I think I am.
You are. We all are.
But I'm still on my journey. I'm still building my business, right? Like I'm still at the very beginning of my journey, 3 years into it. So I'm no guru or wizard. I'm just sharing with you what I can share with you where I am right now.
We're just, you know what we are? We're all just helping each other along the path, man.
Totally. It's awesome.
We're just guys, right?
We're just people, guys and gals.
Yeah.
But I would say that probably the stronger motivation to do anything in life is to prove it to ourselves. And often we could project that onto those around us and say, oh, well, they never really appreciated me, or I never got support from this or that. In Melissa's case, it sounds like you've got tons of support, which is amazing, good stuff. But I would say that feeling of needing to prove it to yourself might never go away. And I think you can use that to your advantage, or if you're not careful, it can also hinder you, because there will be times on everyone's journey where things just don't click and don't seem like they're moving forward. But in fact, it's just sometimes you just need time and space or a break to allow things to develop and evolve.
Yeah. Can I chime in on that, Tony?
Of course, man.
This notion of proving it to yourself. I remember having a conversation. I don't share this with everybody, but it was just before my father passed away. And I had a conversation with him, and he said, I asked him, I was a kid, and I asked him, Dad, how much does a clown make? I wanted to be a clown, at 10 years old. And he said, what do you care what a clown makes? Just do it and be happy. And that and that was pretty cutting edge, like freaking lesson there, because here I am, 40 years later, and still drawing on that lesson and sharing it. And
that's awesome.
I think that's the advice I'd have on that, Melissa, and for anybody else on the call. Just do what you do, and just you be happy. It doesn't matter about other people so much. It matters what it matters to you. Are you happy? And I think Tony, in your work, I think you're always sort of you bring joy into it. You want to be in this sort of vibe of joy in your work and in your life. That's the sense I get. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I'll touch on that in a second, but just two quick segues. Number one, I have to tell you a little story about a clown that happened to me last night. And number two, can we be sure that we leave at least 2 minutes for me to share some resources with everyone on the call?
Yeah, and I got a question from Karen Palmer and Jason too to get.
Sweet. So just really quickly about a clown. Thank you for sharing that, David. That's beautiful. I love that. I hope you've got that written down somewhere. What do you care what a clown makes? Just do it and love it. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and do it and be happy.
Do it and be happy. Fantastic. So last night I did not go to the Cirque du Soleil show that's here in Calgary with a good friend of mine. We were planning to go, but I resisted the temptation for two reasons. One,
it costs too much.
No, I mean, it's not cheap, but I went last week and I saw it, and it is by far the most spectacular Cirque du Soleil show I've ever seen, and I think I've seen 6 shows so far. Incredible, which is why I wanted to go again. But the real reason I forced myself not to go is that I had to do some work for this talk I have next week, which I can honestly say is the most important talk of my career yet. And so I knew I needed to put a couple hours in. I stayed home and I did that. Well, after that, I went out to my local pub and had a pint and these awesome chicken wings, because that was kind of a reward to myself for basically doing my homework. And what do you know? There's a group of people speaking Canadian French off in a table nearby in this quiet pub. So I approach them and I jokingly say, hey, have you ever heard of this group called Cirque du Soleil? And they kind of knew I was playing with them right away. And I said, because I've just seen their show, and it was the most spectacular Cirque show I've seen, of the half dozen or so that I've seen, and I just wanted to just let some strangers know that I really appreciate them as a performer and that it was just so cool. And so I ended up having a beer with them and speaking with them and learning some of the technical secrets behind their show. After I couldn't go to the show that I'd already seen, I was rewarded with basically a backstage experience just moments after doing what I knew I was supposed to do. And I just love the fact that that happened. I put a little thing on Facebook about it because I just was so excited. And it's a neat little lesson to me that, when you do the things that you know you're supposed to do, sometimes a really cool reward is just right around the corner.
Yeah. I wanted to share, Karen writes, thanks for doing this today, Tony. She has a similar story. She lived abroad for 10 years, found herself in a strange place right now because she came back to Canada almost a year ago. She's pursuing her master's. So she's plotting setting up a business that lets her be more creative and feels like a better fit. But she feels resistance. Any words of encouragement? It just feels like the stakes are higher right now.
Totally. Great question, Karen. Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you're experiencing a little bit of reverse culture shock, which is pretty normal for anyone who's been away for... are you still there? The sound just changed.
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought I just got cut off. Which is pretty normal for someone who's been away for so long. I was abroad on and off for 8 years as well, and certainly came back a different person. And I guess the words of encouragement would be that if you're open to some new creative ideas, and you're furthering your education, that just capture those ideas as they come to you. It'd be nice if you woke up one morning and boom, there's your plan. But unfortunately, it's not usually that simple. I would say just be patient and know that as unique as your travel experience is, funny enough, you're actually not alone. There are other expatriates who've lived and traveled abroad for several years who feel a bit displaced. And there's some traveling communities who you can connect with. I'd say the main one that I know of is called Couchsurfing. I don't know if you're familiar with it, couchsurfing.org. Which will give you a dose of being around travelers and foreigners and speaking different languages and cool stuff like that. So hang in there.
I also say, chunk it down and let go of the pressure. Like being in Toronto, Tony, there's been big news the past day and a half, and that's the fact that the Maple Leafs signed Coach Mike Babcock, right? This big coach, the savior. He's like Jesus Christ almost. No offense to anybody, but he's like the savior. And everybody's saying, oh, he's got pressure on him to perform and whatnot. And to me, it's like, what pressure? It's hockey. It's just hockey. You want pressure? Like, come to where I'm doing these treatments for my toe and see the guy, with a foot missing. That's pressure. That's the reality. Or people who have health issues right now, or challenges like that. That's real pressure. Just what you're doing is just stay in the flow, stay in the moment, chunk things down, and just take it one day at a time,
And further to that, Karen, one point that I must mention, since you speak about creativity, is if you find yourself available during a weekend in the middle of August, you should attend one of the most incredible conferences that happens, and that is Mind Camp. Mindcamp.org is Canada's creativity conference, which brings together a little over 200 creative professionals from around the world to share their knowledge in a beautiful, beautiful retreat setting. The conference costs about $500, including your food and accommodation, and
wow.
is by far the most worthwhile money I've spent, both as an attendee and a presenter, over the past 3 years.
Is that with Tim Herson?
That's Tim's conference.
Oh, he's great.
He's phenomenal. He's also one of my mentors.
And he's also written a book on creativity, which you might want to tap into.
Yes.
Jason has a couple questions. Where did you start to look? That I'm not getting. I can't make that out. After moving to Calgary, what motivated you to continue your business and passion instead of starting out fresh?
Well, I think I did start out fresh when I came out here. I came out kind of with a clean slate, and what do you know? It was this unexpected connection that got me some work straight away. My twin sister's boyfriend at the time, an entrepreneur who needed some creativity consulting with a little business venture that he was playing with, and I happened to have the expertise that he needed. So straight away he hired me, not full time, but he hired me to do some work with him that was some of the greatest work I had done, and like right away. So this is within a month of landing in Calgary, and that was so encouraging for me that I've got something to offer. Like, I've already got this skill set to offer. Why would I throw it away? I should use it. I should rent my services out, kind of thing. So that's what I think kept me in the industry.
Yeah, and you know what? Once it's in you, it's hard to leave. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't like, oh, that's it, I'll never do that again. You know, unless it's like you're a dishwasher or something like that. You know?
Well, even if you're a dishwasher, like I'd say, this is something that wonderful that's come up in my speaking association meetings, is that we can't escape where we've come from. You know, and even if some of what's happened in our past we're not pleased with or proud of, it doesn't mean we can't. It doesn't mean we can't share that, like share gifts from that experience with other people. One of the greatest things that I've been told by one of my modern time mentors, a guy named Francois Cotuet, who always comes to the Toronto Creativity Conference. He's from South Africa, and he said to me, never underestimate your ability to inspire other people, no matter where you are in your own head. And to me, that really touched me, because I've considered it myself at times when I have not been feeling so hot, and there have been many of those times, when I felt like, well, I don't have any value to offer. I don't have anything to give. I feel like crap. Like, this is garbage. What am I doing? This business is never going to take off. All this self-doubt. All this stuff.
How do you get through those times, though?
You ask for help. You talk to family and friends and loved ones openly about the hurt you're experiencing, and you don't keep it to yourself and bottle it up and get stressed out and turn to addictions or dangerous behavior as an escape. You talk it out. You maybe talk to a therapist. I've had awesome experiences with my therapist in Toronto, who's, I can say, saved my life a few times. So, talk to people and ask for help is how you get through it.
Irene suggests the title of a book was good for her. It was called "What You Think of Me Is None of My Business." So thanks for sharing that. And
Cool.
Karen says thank you.
David, I also want to thank Tony for answering my question. Thank you, Tony.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
You're
Jason.
welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Tony, I want to wrap up, and we'll still take questions in a moment. I want to do rapid fire with you. I wanted to talk about, creativity. Your 3 ways that we can become more creative, and how do we get through that story of I'm not creative enough, or I'm not creative, period.
Okay, before we jump into rapid fire, can I just list off really quickly a couple of books and websites that I really want people to hear?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, first one, I've already mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning again. Please go to mindcamp.org. It's the best thing you could possibly do this August, and I will be there, and I'd love to see any of you on the call there. Your life will change if you come to this weekend. I
Yeah,
can guarantee it.
Tim Herson, and meeting you and Tim, and if you get to meet Tim, this guy's, he's a pretty incredible guy.
It's phenomenal. The next one I want to jot down or mention is CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. If there are any other speakers on the call, or people who are thinking about getting into speaking professionally for a living, I cannot say enough good things about this association that I have just recently joined. It's been unbelievably incredible and supportive and helpful for me, and that's actually the main reason I'm getting a lot of the work that I'm getting right now is through that association. Or join whatever association you can that's related to your field, and talk to people about what you do, and before you know it, you're getting support and you're getting some business leads.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I'd like to mention is this thing about unexpected connections. We've only briefly touched on it today, but it's kind of my main thing these days, and that is how that is how you can serendipitously move your life forward, by just having conversations with people. And maybe people who you don't even know that well at all, or don't know at all. These connections are how my travel career is shaped and how much of my current career is shaped. And I strongly recommend people take a look at a book that's called Super Connect. This book, that's the main title of it. The subtitle is Harnessing the Power of Networks and the Strength of Weak Links. It's written by Richard Koch and Greg Lockwood. Richard is the author of the 80-20 principle. Really, really useful stuff there about talking and connecting with people who aren't your main network of friends, and how that's a useful thing to do. Almost done, David. And then the last one I'd like to mention is the power of gratitude. A huge lesson that I recently got, as in a couple of weeks ago when I got a job lead from a colleague, was that the reason she put my name forward for an event was that I had spent the afternoon learning from her, taking all kinds of notes and coaching and stuff, and I implemented what she said that I should do. And then I sent her the notes on it. I said, thanks so much for the advice. This is what I did with this one client, and they loved it. Awesome, I appreciate it. And she said to me that by me proving to her that I had taken her advice, therefore justifying the time that she spent with me, she knew that this was a guy who had follow through and who she could trust with one of her main clients when there was a cancellation. And so that's another tip I'd like to offer. And with regards to gratitude, of course, make sure you thank the people who help you move along. Check out 5minutejournal.com. That's a little awesome website where you can buy an actual gratitude journal for $22, or download the $5 app, which I highly recommend, where you just do a gratitude exercise every morning and every night, and that's had a big impact on my life as well.
I do here too, and I do that every day too now.
Beautiful.
It's amazing.
Sorry enough, David. I just wanted to make sure that people had those resources before.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. We got a couple moments left. I just want to confirm it's mindcamp.com, right? Not mycamp.
That's correct. Mind.
All right.
.org, I believe.
All right. So real quick, 3 things we need to do in this lifetime.
Exactly what we want to do and what we're most passionate about.
Okay. All right.
Something to help and support others. And I'd say live from a place of joy and love.
Ah, beautiful. 3 ways we can be more creative, because that's a lot of your work is in creativity.
Absolutely. Write down ideas that come to you in a little notebook that you keep with you, like that you buy at the dollar store, and don't let those thoughts run away. That's the best thing I can possibly suggest.
Okay.
Second thing to be more creative, go to the Toronto Creativity Conference.
Yes.
See you there in August.
Yeah.
And I'd say the third thing would be try new things.
All right.
Get yourself outside your comfort zone at every opportunity you can.
Yeah, and look for your ideas. I always like to go to a mall just to see what's going on and see what people are doing. 2 new ways to address a challenge we're facing. Using
2
our
ways to address a challenge. Great question. It's a new way to address a challenge. Jeez. Some way you haven't addressed it before? I don't know. Breaking patterns, I would say, would be one way. So when you're, and that could be, you can interpret that in many different ways, but I would say, think about it when you take a different path to work in your car or on your bike, or when you're walking. Physically do things differently to change the neurology in your brain while you're thinking about the challenge, and you can see some different ideas come up. People can email me if they like. I've got some pretty cool free techniques that they could use. All
right, and your 3 favorite books.
Okay, well, one of them I'm rereading right now, and that is Super Connect that I just referenced for you, by Richard Koch and Greg Lockwood. I would probably say the Alchemist is got to be another one. About finding your own personal life journey. It's a beautiful story. And another one would probably be one of Dr. Lance Secretan's, which is The Spark, the Flame, and the Torch.
Oh, right.
Which is all about creating your own dream statement and living a life full of inspiration.
And 3 things learning to juggle taught you about yourself.
that I can do much more than I think I can. That I'd say that juggling taught me that I am a performer at heart, and performance is ultimately how I will be the most successful version of myself, helping more people, and that it's totally fine and in fact encouraging to drop the balls. That we've got to be comfortable making mistakes in life, or we're not really going to move forward.
Right. Because we can always pick the balls up after.
Absolutely.
And try again. Right? Here's where you reach Tony. It's eyeontheball.ca, right?
That's right.
Lorraine Ma, who's with Coffee News Toronto, who's our sponsor, couldn't be here today, unfortunately, because she's busy. And me, if you need coaching. Next month, we're going to be back on June 25th at noon. We have our guest is actually here with us, Tony, and we're going to talk about self-love, the self-love diet with Sue Vaughn. And boy, is she ever a real little dynamo. Boy, just an amazing woman. So
fantastic.
That's next month. I hope everybody can join in. Any last questions for Tony? Any shares? Anything you want to get across? Unmute yourself. Type in the chat bar. We have a chat bar. That's where I've been going to. We have a questions pane. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thanks. Colleen says, thanks, David and Tony. It's been interesting. Thank you, Colleen. And I just want to thank, I feel like I'm on Romper Room here, Tony. Sue Vaughn, yourself, of course, Steve, Melissa. I see Melissa. I see Larissa. I see Kelly. And I see Jason, Karen, Irene, Gerardo, and, of course, Colleen. Yeah, and you. So thanks, Tony. I really appreciate this.
Okay. Hey, Dave, I also want to thank you, too, for also letting me know about this web seminar. It was very helpful.
Thanks, Jake.
I found some very motivational speeches, and I hope that this could, change some of our lives, too. So thank you, Tony, for attending.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for mentioning that. And I welcome everyone to reach out to me at UCA.